So this is a story I wrote about two characters that are not unsimilar to Elizabeth and I, my partner, called Albert and Ethel Pussywinter. They were named after the frosty periods in our lives when maybe the relationship doesn't go so well. The only thing with Albert, he manages to get Ethel to do some crazy things that I would have a job getting my partner to do. So this is Get Well Soon. The Country Blend Band is playing at the Shoal Center this afternoon. Are you well enough to go now? Asked Mr. Pussywinter of his wife Ethel. I'm supposed to be home from work and sick in bed, she retorted. Albert Pussywinter groaned. He loved Ethel dearly, and the show wouldn't be much fun without her. At this prospect of going alone, he scratched his head and his eyes took on a twinkle. Suddenly a brave idea gripped him. Why not wear a disguise? No one would know you, and the word will never get back to your office. Albert, I have to be careful. Yes, I feel better, but I can't have work mad at me for being out having fun on sick pay. Still, selfish old Albert persisted. Come on, sweetie. It'll be fun. Heather across the street has a whole collection of wigs. You have sunglasses, and Gordy has that old wheelchair we can borrow, and we'll fit right in with the seniors crowd. Ethel winced at the idea, but Albert could see she would weaken. I'll wheel you in quietly after the show starts, and we can sit at the back and leave early. Everything will be just fine. Come on, you can do it. There was a pause, and then a little sigh of capitulation. Albert believed he had won. Little did he know how wrong he would be. Oh, the blonde wig was no problem. It fit fine. Ethel looked great, almost too great, and the sunglasses gave her a sexy, come-thither appeal. But the wheelchair, that was something else. Anything metal in Gordy's yard was destined to be cut up and welded into the form of bugs and clocks or anything artsy Gordy's fantastic mind could imagine. Well, needless to say, the wheelchair had some loose parts, and the whole contraption wobbled, which gave Ethel's stomach further reason to stay home. She had given in the end, and allowed herself to be treated thus, because the thought of Albert having all that fun without her bothered her. Besides, she loved her dear Albert. He was such fun. All right, I will go, she told him at last. The wheelchair was stuffed into Ethel's rusty old Toyota Land Cruiser. Albert drove, and Ethel slouched low in the back seat with a white shawl pulled up close around her chin to avoid detection. The fall air was cool, almost frosty when they reached the Shoal Seniors Center. Here Ethel was installed safely into her wheelchair. Albert bought their tickets, and together they rolled into the auditorium. Country Blend was up on stage. An electric bass guitar droned over the aging voices. Wild fingers raced up and down the piano keys, and a jazz drummer did a quiet tickety-boom on his kit, in time to some forgotten old song. Albert recognized a few people from Ethel's workplace, and seated amongst the hundreds of spectators, and he did his best to wheel Ethel as far away from them as possible. Don't you dare make a scene, she hissed as they rocked and rolled across the hardwood floor. The wheelchair squeaked, the seats sagged, and only a few faces turned to smile a greeting to the odd couple as they lurched past. The band labored on, heads nodded and toes tapped. Albert located a final resting place for Ethel near the back of the hall and he just put a final spin on the chair so she could see the band better, when a loose wheel nut fell to the floor with a crack. 60-year-old Albert did his best to catch the collapsing wheel. But at that very moment, Ethel's saggy seat ripped open. There was a loud crash near the back of the hall. A blonde wig shot skyward and sunglasses rattled across the floor. The crowd, their heads began to turn and eyes bulged and fingers pointed. Albert panicked, and he tried to drag his dear wife Ethel clear of the wrecked wheelchair, but a deep cut on her leg reddened a white woolly sock, eyes teared, and an obvious broken finger was caught in the spokes of the attached wheel. There really was no escape. The band lost all sense of timing and had quit playing. The Pussywinters were now the main act. A small crowd had gathered. An ambulance was called, and within a few minutes, crisp white shirts and navy blue pants surrounded Ethel as she lay on the floor. The bleeding was stopped and the finger rescued from the wheel spokes. And then Ethel was gently removed from the building on a stretcher. Albert, still holding the wheel and blonde wig and a pair of sunglasses, trailed miserably along behind. There was some explaining to do at Ethel's workplace, but all accepted that the wheelchair had been meant to help with poor, sick Ethel's recovery from the flu. She did, however, receive a get-well-soon card and spent several more weeks at home recovering with a broken finger.